world of uniparty politics, Americans are not seeing that fascism is not bearing to the left or the right, but a corporate endeavor to control policy for self-enrichment and aggrandizement to non-existent issues to socially condition the masses for global influence and control. This is today's New World Order. We the people are not happy with it. This is America Talks.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to America Talks, where we live in a day and age when Donald Trump can commandeer the D.C. Metropolitan Police. I'll tell you what, things are really going on. It's looking up a storm out there, and apparently when states and cities can't take care of their own matters, the President of the United States must step in, and yes, he does have the legal authority to do so. But does this mark a time when we would need a constitutional convention within our country? AJ, what do you think, bud?
As far as having a federal constitutional convention, no. I don't believe we need to have a federal constitution right now as far as the convention goes. As far as our states go, without a doubt, we do have states that need to have constitutional conventions, and Kentucky undoubtedly is one of them. That's why we have our guest here tonight, Tony Wheatley and Nancy Tate. Nancy is actually state rep for District 27. Do I have that right, Nancy?
That's correct, yes, sir. District 27 meet in Hardin counties. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And Tony is actually the head of Constitutional Kentucky. Tony, let the listeners out there know what Constitutional Kentucky is.
You muted?
Okay, can you hear me now? Our goal basically is
there you now.
Many constitutions out in the hands of students and anybody asks for one. We currently, in September, we're starting a new program where we're actually going into the schools, handing out the Constitution, and teaching the small class. And it's basically with the simple amendments to the Bill Act. So we can get looking more understanding and moving forward. Asking the questions and getting behind the civics classes again instead of schools with bypassing.
I lose you, did I?
Oh,
okay.
Never use this one, so bear with me. I don't have another one to work with. Can you hear me now?
It's a little staticky. I didn't know if it was on my end or not, but I saw.
Yeah, can't hear Tony.
Let me log on my laptop real fast and just bear with me. Website discussion and that. I know like 2 days back.
Did you get any of what he said, AJ? Can you give us an update on what he was saying?
I could barely get anything out of that to tell you the truth.
I'm going to my laptop. I need a better microphone on it and see what happens.
Okay, he's switching over to the laptop.
All right. So while he's doing so, should we introduce Nancy and we'll pick it back up with him after?
All right, and I just so Nancy, I have to ask the following question: what got you interested in Kentucky needing to have a constitutional convention?
Yeah, so one of the things that I, when I was elected, and every year I take a pledge that I will uphold the Constitution of the United States of America and of Kentucky. And so since I'm taking that pledge, then I obviously want to make sure that I understand the Constitution as well as possible. So because when I say that, it's because it's very legal terms and it's been interpreted very many years and very different times. But so as I'm looking through this, as we know, the Kentucky became a state, a Commonwealth of Kentucky in 1792. And then since its inception in 1792, we've had 4 constitutions, of which we are living under the 4th constitution that was adopted in 1891. And so, when I think about 1891, 2025, that's 134 years. And so we know that a lot has changed in 134 years. If I go back and I look at all the reasons why potentially we might want to modify our Constitution. For example, we talk about all of those and all the reasons why I think that we need to modify the Constitution.
Now, it's interesting that we are having this discussion right now because I know that the last time that there was an effort to replace Kentucky's Constitution, that was actually back during the governorship of Burt Combs back in the early 60s. And that was the closest that we actually came to actually having another constitutional convention. But as we can see, it's been 60 years from now, and very little has changed except for one major thing. The Republican Party now has practically almost full control of the state of Kentucky, with the exception of the governor.
That's correct. And it's interesting that you bring up the 60s, because in 1966, in Gatewood versus Matthews, the Kentucky Supreme Court actually gave the General Assembly the authority to change the Constitution, to actually call a convention of state and to modify the Constitution without the general population electing that and voting on that. And the way that they came to that conclusion was, with our Constitution in 1891, the 3 previous constitutions did not require the general population voting on them. So the Constitution of 1891 actually said that now we have to call the Convention of State and the process for calling the Convention of State. So the Kentucky Supreme Court in 1966 said that we, as the General Assembly, had the authority to change the Constitution without the general population, because the Constitution of 1891 was the only Constitution that has required that process. Now, if you think back to what actually happened in the 60s and what was happening in the 60s, I could understand how the Kentucky Supreme Court should come to that conclusion, but I doubt that with the composition of our current Kentucky Supreme Court, that they would uphold that decision from 1966.
And unfortunately, I do have to agree because, John, prepare your ears for this one. Despite how red a state Kentucky is right now, the conservative justices on the court.
Unfortunately, you're correct. That's correct. Yes, sir. Yeah. So the only thing that we could count on, which we might be able to count on, is that the justices would use the precedent in the previous courts. Right. But I don't know that we should count on that. I think that we should continue with the Convention of State and then potentially change that Amendment 258 in order to reflect what the previous General Assemblies had in mind.
Mm-hmm. So I know that I'm a fan of going ahead and proceeding with the Constitutional Convention in Kentucky. I know that you are as well. Tony, where do you stand on it?
As far as the state of Kentucky goes, I think that we need to, no matter what power can control, the fact is power. Power is not in our hands, it's in the power of the legislators and the government. So we're kind of let that control and being said,
Tony, your mic is still giving us fits.
The friends on YouTube, I'm not one of these. I don't think that's going to happen for years either. There we go. Maybe it's like YouTube, nothing something to do. Let's be mindful of nothing to
While Tony's working on that, one of the things I might want to add also is, one of the suggestions and some of the conversations that I've been involved in, we've talked about how would we proceed with this. So, from a General Assembly perspective, how would we proceed with this? And if you look at the committees that the House currently has, the House currently has a committee called Election, Constitution Amendment, and Intergovernment Affairs. And so, from my perspective, while there's not a committee like that in the Senate, that committee has been in the House for a really long time. So to me, that would be a great way, a segue into how to actually start this convention of states. Even if we actually called it and we got a fourth of the elected voters, the voters that the qualified voters, to give us the approval, we've got that committee that would actually give some precedence, some credence, some credibility to the process.
I know that the way that it's actually supposed to be done, Bob, according to what the Constitution says. Besides, I know that you acknowledged earlier the Supreme Court decision from the '60s, but the way that the Constitution of Kentucky currently outlines it is that we are to put that decision up before the voters after, of course, it passes in the General Assembly, and then from there, they would vote on whether or not we should have a constitutional convention or not. I think that if the Republican Party was to sell this need for a constitutional convention appropriately and say, hey, this was written back when the Democrats were in charge back in the 1890s, it's not as effective as it should be now, because you can tell that the Democrat Party controlled this state for well over a century. We need to actually have a blueprint for a conservative state, and I think that the majority of Kentucky's populace would vote.
Well, I think that what we have to do is we have to give the justification for why we need that. And one of the reasons why we need to do that is because, according to Section 25, it says that we have the right to own slaves. I mean, I'm sure that most people would agree that we don't need that part in our Constitution anymore. Of course, the people that are going to argue against it would say basically that why don't we just strip that piece out and not worry about the rest of it? But if you look at Section 145, it says that idiots are prohibited from participating in the election. Who can determine, who's determining who's an idiot? I mean, on any given day, anybody can determine the idiot is all right.
Needless to say, even though that, and I hate to say this, but it's true, even though that we may put those amendments in that would negate that language, at the same time, the language is still there.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, and I think too, if you go back and think about when we tried to amend the Constitution, or we suggested to amend the Constitution in order to change the language for public schools, that section was actually idiots prohibited from participating in elections was to be on the ballot. For that amend the Constitution to change to fund public schools. So people were like, how in the world, who's making that recommendation that idiots can participate in elections? And that was actually already part of the Constitution. And how they ended up being in on the ballot, no wonder we can't get constitutional changes whenever we have members on the ballot.
Well, we started to deep dive into the issues of why we think a constitutional convention should be called. I do. I actually have a short here of the reasons why I got intense enough, so I had to make a list. Let's see. Here we are. So right now in Kentucky, we have a fully elected judiciary. Being somebody who is a legal scholar like myself, I can tell everybody for a fact of the matter, elected. The reason why I say that is because when you have an elected judge, he's not just concerned about what the documentation says when he's making a decision or what precedent says. He's also worried about what his constituency says. This is part of the reason why the Supreme Court, the way the appointment system is the way it is, so that justices are adhering to precedent and what the actual text says instead of what the constituency might say, in theory. Now, you have those that want to veer away from that with the idea that the Constitution is a living document, which we know it's not. It's an enduring document. It means that it can be changed from time to time when we need it. But then you have circumstances like what we have with the Kentucky Constitution, where it just needs to either be scrapped entirely, or we just need to have a convention of states, like you mentioned, that would completely, almost rewrite it for all intents and purposes. Well, we have other issues like that.
It encourages not a good place for any of us to be.
I'm not sure what is going on with our audio tonight. It's been bad.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there playing with things, trying to figure it out myself. That's why I just canceled my camera, be distracted.
Okay.
But I don't know if Tony can't hear because it's his on his end, or I know I can pull it up on Facebook and hear it. And somebody else said they can't hear it on a paired Facebook channel.
I'm still using it.
Huh.
What if you're tired? I know Italian.
You do.
Tony, how's your
That's
mic
okay,
doing
go.
this time?
I'm on the stove. I am on the post. I'm on some
Oh,
dope.
here's something funny. I can hear
And
Tony
go.
perfectly fine right now.
Yeah, I can hear Tony.
Right. Tony, I missed that earlier. I wanted to bring that into the discussion again. Where do you stand on Kentucky's need for a constitutional convention right now?
I don't think Tony can hear us.
I can't hear you guys. I'm not sure what the problem is.
Hang on just a moment. Let's see here.
I think we're just having a bad tech day.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Hear me now? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
It's fine, Nancy.
Yeah. Tony, can you hear us now?
I can hear Nancy.
I think Tony's probably going to have to go out and come back in order to get his audio connected.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He just went out.
So, Nancy, that was my first. Kentucky needs to judiciary as far as how we appoint them, because, as you know as well too, I might as well bring this up. If Andy Bashir wants to
You guys
replace the
hear
judge
me
right
now?
now, oh yeah, we can hear you, Tony.
Give him a thumbs up. I can hear you, Tony.
I can hear you too.
Yeah, I still got no sound. I don't. Did you check your Tony? Oh, you can't hear me. You guys can go.
I
You
hear you, but
can
I don't
go
know if
ahead and
anybody else
continue.
can. Well, continuing on right now. Tony, can you hear me at all?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Nancy, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, you can hear me. I know John can hear me. Tony, can you?
Tony can't hear us.
Okay.
So I was saying, if you and Nancy continue, it might be somewhat entertaining for those listening, and hopefully Tony will get in here soon.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you now, Tony. I can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, he can't hear us.
Okay. So, Nancy, I'll go ahead and continue on judiciary real quick. We also have another problem with judiciary. It's also some of the local elections in Kentucky regarding town council and, of course, most mayorships in Kentucky. Those are in nonpartisan elections, as is the judiciary. To me, that's a problem.
Yeah, I understand. We've been in a lot of conversations regarding the local elections, especially the ones that are nonpartisan. And I've been involved in a lot of conversations about that. And the concern about making them partisan elections at this point is because of we have to face it. It's these elections get pretty hostile. And we also saw the situation. Was it in Minnesota where there was the legislator that was actually killed and her husband? And so,
Yes.
and so the fear is that if we change the local elections to where they are partisan, then that will discourage people from actually running for those positions. I think that people are already discouraged, but that would even further discourage them. So I truly, as somebody who has been, put in pretty precarious situations at times, I can certainly understand why there would be some concerns about the local elections.
Definitely. But
I
to
do,
say that
do
the
agree,
elections been
but I do agree with you
Go
from
ahead.
the judicial perspective. Yeah, that maybe that would be okay for that to be partisan, or to actually go to how other states are. There's a recommendation on who those positions should be filled by. Let's say that's. I think you started to go in this direction by the governor. Let's say,
Yes.
but then they have to be agreed to by the Senate. They
Yes,
have to be
I was about to say.
Absolutely. So if you look at the composition, you were bringing this up earlier, and it's a fact. If you look at the composition of our Kentucky Senate, I think it's 31 to 38. 31 to 38 are currently Republican, which is a representation of the will of the people. And so if the Senate confirmed those justices, then I would be perfectly okay with that.
Me and TJ Roberts have had this conversation, and I am right there with you all on this. The federal system is the best thing for Kentucky to adopt in that regard, which is the
I agree
governor
with that.
makes the nomination, and then the Senate makes the appointment.
That's correct. And the confirmation. That's correct. Yeah. And then let's just say hypothetically that Kentucky turns back to where, 31 to 38 are Democrats, and they would have the opportunity to do that confirmation and nomination as well.
But one of the things that I would love right now, because here's the thing, if we had that system, it would force Andy Beshear to have to find people that the Senate would approve.
That's correct. or we
Mm-hmm.
would a justice. That's correct for that district. I agree with you. Yes, sir. Yeah, you would have
Yeah.
to find somebody. He would have to find people that are moderate and or right leaning before the Senate would confirm him.
Yes.
And not just
Another.
popularists. They wouldn't have to be popularists. They would have to be constitutionalists, constitutional
Yes.
purists.
I know another thing. Might as well point this out as well. I am not a fan of the legislature's current calendar, which is they have that one mandatory session at the start of the year, regardless of whether it's 30 days or 60 days. I just don't like it. Just having that lump sum all in one session. My opinion is, and I'm not for a full-time legislature. I want to make that clear right now. Not
Right.
for making the legislature full-time in regards to session. But I do see the necessity for us to spread the session out over the year, and especially because legislature was out of session whenever Andy Beshear was doing his tyranny on Kentucky during COVID. And the legislature didn't have the chance to do anything about it. Daniel Cameron did what little bit he could, but had the legislature been on top of him in the middle of all this, I think we would have seen a different outcome much quicker.
Well, of course, I agree with that. So you're suggesting that the general system could call itself in the session. So even if we have very similar to what we have on the ballot to where during if we
I can undoubtedly agree with. So I also mentioned, I also believe that the legislature has the ability to put stuff back. Let's turn to a topic that was a hot issue last year, and this has been a roadblock for the legislature in trying to pass school choice. But right now, the only schools guaranteed funding in Kentucky right now is public schools. We tried to have Amendment 2 passed last year, but it did not meet anywhere near the support that it needed to be able to become law.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I don't remember exactly what bill it was passed whenever it was not veto proof, but the bill that we passed was that funding for the school resource officers in private schools could be funded by the General Assembly, by the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and so that passed both the Senate and the House. Then it was vetoed by the governor because he said that it was unconstitutional for the General Assembly to fund resource officers for private schools, and I think that that's tragic, and potentially tragic that we can't do that for all the schools in Kentucky.
And it needs to be pointed out that the legislature has tried to pass a few bills on school choice thus far, but the reason why none of them have been able to stick is because as soon as they reach the Supreme Court says no because of what the current Constitution says.
That's correct. And it's going to be very interesting to see how that conflicts with the federal executive orders.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, and if we potentially are not provided federal funding because we don't have school choice.
I've been floating that around that the possibility is there that it could happen. So yeah, undoubtedly, school choice will be a button issue if we were to have action. And the last thing I wanted to go ahead and mention as well, I also believe, as we've seen with Amendment 2 falling down the way it did, we had a pro-life amendment in 2022 that would have had an opportunity to get passed, but it fell short as well. I can say this as just a general. I'm not a fan of the way that the amendment process is for the Kentucky Constitution itself in regards to yeah, the General Assembly will pass it, but then you leave it up to a populace that can be easily deceived by the mainstream media, and the next thing you know, that amendment falls on its butt.
Yeah, especially when you take in the Constitutional Amendment number 2 that you talked about. Whenever you look at money outside of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, I believe that if I recall correctly, like we were outspent like 8 to 1 or 10 to 1, and most of that money, like 80 to 90% of that money, came from out of state, which was very deceptive. And if we're allowing out of state money um, to I guess to convince us or to discourage us from what we as the people need to do for our own state and for our own children. And I think that's very unfortunate that we're doing that. That our process allows that to happen. And I like the way that you used the word deceived because it was very deceptive. It was there were flat out lies. There was total
Mm-hmm.
information that was communicated, and it was very unfortunate that happened.
And
I think
unfortunately, they're going to do that in every race.
Yeah, I think the
Which is, and which is why I wanted to mention it. I believe that when Kentucky has a constitutional convention and we do go ahead and rewrite these things, my opinion is the amendment process should be this: the General Assembly should pass an amendment, but instead of going to the people as it does now, instead send it to the fiscal courts and let them decide it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why the Gatewood versus Matthews in 1966 said that the current process for amending the Constitution in itself is unconstitutional. Isn't
Mm-hmm.
that interesting? That's the interesting part. One of the things too that I want to point out is the Section 99, and that's for the each one of the positions that have to be elected in all of the 120 counties. It says that we have to have a judge, a county court clerk, a county attorney, all 120 counties, a sheriff, a jailer, a county surveyor, an assessor, a justice of the peace, and a constable. So one of the things that I find very interesting, and I'm talking about this, if you look at just Hardin County and the jail in Hardin County, in 2023, the budget itself, the proposed budget was 2 million. The budget that for 25-26 will be 5.8 million. So from 2022-23, we went from a 2 million to a 25-26 to a 5.8 million of a $12 million budget. So in 22, it was a 2 million of a 12 million, and now it's in 25-26 is a 5.8 million in a 12 million. So just the requirement to have a jail in every county because of inflation could potentially bankrupt every county.
Mm-hmm. And it needs to be brought up. And Nancy, you know this as well as I do, and I know that me and Tony have had discussions like this as well. Kentucky right now depends a lot on federal funding.
A lot.
So much to the point that essentially, worst case scenario, the federal government were to collapse tomorrow, Kentucky would not be able to sustain itself. We'd be gone with the federal government as well.
Yeah, I think that's the probability. God forbid, I'm going to say is unlikely. But when you have a 36 to a $40 trillion debt in the United States, that's a 36 to 40 trillion dollar debt. And if we as American people do not learn to control our appetite for spending, we will be bankrupt. And I think that's God forbid that happens, but it's not impossible. I mean, look at Venezuela. What happened to Venezuela? They went from one of the richest countries in the world to where they're one of the poorest countries in the world.
Mm-hmm. And it needs to be brought up.
But we need to look at.
Well, go ahead, Tony. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say we need to look at the. You can look at the 120 counties we have.
Mm-hmm.
When you said in their budget meetings, or you said in one of their fiscal meetings, you understand that they can't use any loopholes to get away from things, and so their budget it goes up every year, and it's partly because they have a bad habit of spending, just like any other, like the federal government, anything else. Uh, but there's everybody's out there trying to attract that money, and yet they do nothing to attract people to help pay that bill. We're in a position now. Let's take Spencer County for example. Uh, they fought for the fire department and the police department to get the hazard duty kept pay. That was going to cost them an astronomical more money. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was 3 times what their normal budget was, and they had to turn it down. So they lost revenue from taxpayers, move people out. And I've lost you again. Um,
Yeah, and I
but
think,
the counties,
well, I think one of
the
the
counties,
reasons, Tony,
we're
that,
in trouble.
Uh-huh.
yep. Yeah, and unfortunately, Tony, the
hear
reason why the budgets are being proposed from that perspective is that in order for the counties and the cities to be competitive, they have to pay their employees a competitive rate. And that's
Sure.
that's a fact. All of us small businesses and all of us cities and counties are in exactly the same boat with
Right.
in order to be competitive.
Yeah, and that's the thing that we see more than anything is that people try to go to another county to work, and when you get these little bed and breakfast cities like Taylorsville, for example, they can't do a whole lot with what they've got. So most of the people move out or don't move; they just go out and spend money in other counties. So there's got to be a way that we can eliminate a lot of things that are unproductive. I guess is what I'm trying to say. But there's so many avenues of things out there that just don't make sense that we're spending money on. It's every county does it. It's just a matter of priorities, and I think for sometimes we fail to realize that the people are the ones that are actually paying the bills and not coming out of their coffer. But if we
That's
don't put
right.
it in there, we don't come out. So that's where every county needs to work is how to build their county up to increase revenue in the county without just running people off. It's a fine line. I think we fail a lot of times in that. So, just my
Well, I
opinion.
think, Tony, one of the things from a General Assembly perspective that we're looking at very closely is in order to be able to afford the appetite or even the debt that we have here in Kentucky, we need to bring in good jobs. And so we
Yeah.
need to bring in, jobs that are high paying and that and we're working really diligently on doing that, making sure that we're one of the most job friendly, if not the most job friendly state in the nation. And what we are doing is we're actually competing with all the states that are around us, the Tennessees and
Sure.
the Indianas and the Georgias, because they are very job hungry as well. And I think going back to Governor Bevan, I think the only person that I've heard talk about this is that he said that in order for us to be able to pull ourselves out of the debt, that we would have to bring over 1 million people into the state, and that would be over 1 million jobs into the state in order to be able to, from a state perspective, to be able to afford our unfunded liability from a state pension perspective. And so
Well,
unfortunately, the cities and the counties are in exactly the same situation with
Yeah.
their unfunded pension.
But one of the things that happened in Mercer County just a couple of years ago, we fought hard against the solar panels. They took
Hmm.
2,000 acres that we had already set aside for industry, and we had a large company was going to come in and buy that property and build and bring in about 900 jobs. Well, the company took away that opportunity when they come in and basically just decided that they wanted the property and they were going to put solar panels on it. And of course, the county lost. We did keep I think a few acres, but not enough to really bring in large amounts of employment. Uh, we keep losing out those little things. I know Breckinridge County lost quite a bit with some of their land down there, and I'm assuming Meade County did too. Uh,
Sure.
but I mean, I drive down to Breckinridge County and I see solar panels everywhere where I grew up. It's like this is not what I want. But
And prepare your ears for this. So, my friend Asa Wagner, he's in Hart County. Right
right on.
across from the house he lives in is a solar farm. I bring that up for a reason because he actually brought in the company that's in charge of that solar field and asked, who it's benefiting, why are y'all here? They were actually harvesting solar energy for eastern Kentucky. So they weren't
Yeah,
even affecting that county. I mean,
and they generally bring in 9 or maybe 10 people as employees, and those aren't astronomically paying jobs. I mean, you have a few, but uh, I think for the long haul, I'm against solar panels. You want to put it on top of your on a Walmart store, go for it. Or a parking lot, go for it.
I'm all
But don't
for it.
take it.
If I'm all for it, if private industry wants to do it for themselves, I am not a fan of doing
Yeah.
it mainstream because if you do it mainstream, nobody's going to be able to keep up with
Well,
anything.
porting in Mercer County, they actually put up their own, which I applauded them for that because they run 9% of their electricity was actually run by solar, which I was shocked the number to be that high. So I know
Well,
it's
you
a
can actually.
long way off from what we were talking about, but all comes down to we have to decide: do we want the progress that's coming in, or do we want stable jobs that's going to bring more money back into our county? And
I have to.
same
I have
way
to
with
throw
the
this out.
state.
I have to
Excuse
throw
me.
this out too. We can thank the Biden administration for the Inflation Reduction Act for our solar panels,
Hmm.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so you
definitely,
have to go
definitely.
back and say, follow the money. Who's actually going to make the money for that from that?
Yeah,
And it's the companies that are putting those solar panels in.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now they're
Man,
trying to put windmills in Henderson County. So I got a call yesterday about that, and they were trying to see what we could do to stop it. But fortunately, when once the utility gets involved, we're not stopping it. They
Yeah.
they're selling these farmers are thinking they're doing business with farming industries, and all they're doing is farming solar panels.
Yeah.
And
hmm
that's what happened in Mercer County and in Breckenridge County also.
Hmm.
I know Morris Lucas. We talked about it a little bit back several months ago, but
Hmm.
it just seems like we've got to make that choice. Where are we gonna put our foot down? I mean, we can't do nothing about eminent domain, and once it gets in utilities' hands, it's pretty much done. So
Yeah. So, Tony, I don't think I actually heard you say what is your opinion about the convention of state for Kentucky.
for Kentucky, I think anybody that has too much power, we need to have it. Whether it's a Democrat, whether it's Republican, Independent, whatever. I think when you have that much power in your legislators, we we're left out.
hmm
We don't have. We may push and push and push, but let's face it, there are probably not 20 legislators up there that are going to think like we the people. And I'm not criticizing everybody. I mean, in
Huh.
different points, I think everybody's got their agenda. If it works for them, they're going to vote for it. If it doesn't work for them, they're not. And I think
Hmm.
that it's that's just common nature. You're going to do what your people
Well,
want
Tony,
to
to
do. I
follow
mean,
up on that, I mean, this is just a given. Anytime you're dealing with something, let's say a legislature, a convention, or anything like that, everybody there who is there to vote has their own agenda when they walk in that door. That's just a
Well,
given.
well, and I think okay, it just depends upon what you're saying there, because I'm going to
Right.
tell you that I represent District 27. I
sure
Right.
you do.
represent Meade and Hardin County. So if you want to call that my agenda, then I'm going to absolutely agree with you because that's what I'm elected to do is
Right.
Well,
represent
yeah, I
Meade and
think you're
Hardin
right. I mean,
County.
I'm not criticizing you for that because that's what they put you in there for.
That's exactly
I
right.
mean,
Absolutely. And
and
I fight for my county. I fight for
yeah,
my
and I know
district.
you do because
Absolutely.
I had calls about you earlier in the
That's right.
past,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, that's right.
the first time I met you was actually at a campaign. Uh, what do you call it? Just training
Yeah.
with Farm Bureau, and that's
Yeah.
been a few years ago.
Many years ago. That was in
But
20. That's correct.
yeah, but I knew then just by talking to you that you're going to represent your area well, and because you had the heart of number one, a fighter, and number two, you seem to understand what the community wants. And we had a
Yeah.
really short conversation that day, but I remember it, and I think that you've done well. I've had people call, complain. Oh, you know her? Yeah, I know her. I think she's got fine. It's just
Yeah.
probably one woman, but she keeps calling me all the time. Every time you do
But I
something.
think that
But
I'm going to go back to from my perspective about the General Assembly. Everybody in there, they do walk in with their own agenda, and that is
yeah,
absolutely to represent their districts. And I'll say, I'll stand up for my fellow legislators because I
Mhm.
think that some of them have been in there for a really, really long time, but most of them haven't been. If you go back and think about it, since I've been in office since I was elected in 2018. So I'm in my fourth term, my seventh year, because it's a 2-year term, but I'm
yeah.
in the top 30% for the length of service. So
Wow.
if there's a lot of conversation about term limits, to me,
Mhm.
that's absolutely a perfect demonstration of term limits. If you've got somebody who's in office for 7 years, and I'm in the top 30% for length of service.
Yeah.
So that the attrition by itself actually produces that. Some of it, of course, is the fact that we went from a Democrat majority to a Republican majority. And
The
that
big
to me was
change.
the will of the people. Absolutely. So to me, that was a perfect demonstration of the will of the people. Now, Tony, too, if you talk about, if you want to go down to every little bitty, bill that's passed or every little bill that goes in, well, all of them are big, but every bill that's passed, some of them are little, some of them are just a few words, but those
Yeah.
words are important, and words are important to somebody. Even though some of the bills I look at and go, why in the world are we even voting on this? It's because it's important to somebody,
Sure.
right?
Now I
And
understand
so
now.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important for us to try to reflect back on why is a legislator or why is the body voting on that bill, and it's
Mhm.
because it's important to somebody.
Yeah.
Um, and most of the bills, you can go back to like this past session. I'm kind of rusty here, but let's just say that there were 1,200 bills that were filed. I can't remember exactly how many from the from the House and the
Mm.
Senate. Less than 200 actually were passed into
Right.
legislation. And some of those, most of those were just updating language to a bill that currently existed. And so very few of them were completely new bills. Now, the ones that were completely new bills, if you think back over the last couple of years, those were bills that everyone that's participating in this session here would agree on. And those were uh, removing men out of women's sports.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And transgender mutilation of minors. Those were
True.
things that we all fought really hard in order for them for the language to be right and for those bills to actually pass because we knew that that was the will of the people for those bills to pass.
Well, I don't.
And
I don't really mean that. I guess I said that a little bit wrong about agendas. I think, like you said, I think most people go in with the agenda of my people want this or want that. My problem is when they tie themselves into the gaming industry or the horse racing and individual groups that really don't concern the majority of the people.
Basically, they're
When
fighting for
when
the
it
ones
comes
that own them instead of the ones they are supposed to
Yeah,
represent.
and that's where I see the biggest issue. For the most part, if I had to name anybody that I would
well,
disagree with on this,
let's don't name people.
no, I'm not. No, no, no. I'm not going to name any people. No, no, no.
Don't get me
No,
in trouble,
that
Tony.
won't happen. People know me, know who it is already. So, uh,
Don't get me in trouble.
but no, I'm not naming names because I appreciate you being on here. The very fact is that I just think there's a handful that and some of them have been there too long, uh, and they've gotten close with some of these other groups that really doesn't do a lot for the whole state. Uh,
Yeah.
horse industry, for example. I mean, yeah, we're going to support the horse industry because number one, it's a big industry in the
It's
state,
one of our
brings a lot
signature.
of
It's one of
money
our
in.
signature. Absolutely, it's one of
Yeah,
our signature
absolutely.
Horse,
incomes.
yeah.
Uh, but I
Absolutely,
don't I
Horse
don't think
racing and
we
bourbon. Yep.
that's
We're going to
right.
yeah.
have to
But
support
I
that.
don't think we
Beautiful
just give them
women.
a blank check and say, "Here, y'all do what you want to do." And I think
Uh,
sometimes we people do that, and I don't like that. But
Well,
when you're working
but
for the
Tony,
little guy,
yeah, and I'm going to tell
you
you that I have yet, even I've only been there 7 years, but I'm going to tell you that I have yet to see a perfect bill.
yeah,
I have yet to see a perfect bill. Every bill that I have ever seen actually had to have amendments. modifications, because sometimes there are unintended consequences.
Right.
And it's not like we have to pass it in order to know what's there. We know what's there. We know
Yeah.
exactly what's there. But and that's one of the reasons, and as we get feedback, as we see what the consequences are, as somebody might say, oh gosh, did you think about, well, sometimes we can't think about everything, of course.
Yes,
Even going
exactly.
back to one of my favorite things, the safe haven baby boxes. We're on the seventh or eighth prototype. So
Mhm.
that's a perfect example of how there wasn't a perfect prototype the very first time. And so everything that we're doing, time changes, and our knowledge changes, and we have the right to get smarter. So I would like to see a perfect bill. I would like to be able to be the one that introduces the perfect bill, but I have yet to see one.
Let's get civics back in classrooms, and I'll be a happy camper.
Yeah, we
I
passed that.
think,
We passed that legislation.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually
yeah,
passed that legislation that
yeah, I
civics is
know. I want
required
to
in
see them do
school.
it. They haven't
Yeah,
done
they
it yet.
will. They'll do
Uh,
that. Yep.
yeah, it'll
Yeah,
get there.
it'll
And
get
so I
there.
do appreciate you,
Absolutely.
all y'all, for that, because it is
Hmm.
important. I mean, I talk to people every day about the Constitution, and we're failing generally, overall. Uh, Kentucky is now maybe it's a change, and hopefully we'll get back on the path. Uh, uh, the done a lot of good things, and I do appreciate that. And I'm not going to badmouth every bill that gets written up there, but I think the
That's right.
the problem we may have more than anything is misinformation.
Oh,
Hmm.
Because
absolutely.
if you write a
Absolutely.
bill, and if it's almost perfect, somebody on here will say, "Well, it's going to do this or it's going to do that," without knowing that. They trying to read between the lines, and
Hmm.
they just need to be written in a way that there are no in between lines and gray areas. And I know you can't do it on everything, but when it comes to Kentucky, we've got a long ways to go. We've made good strides in our bills that we've passed. I think we are turning a lot of the reds over at least purple now. So because of our bills we do pass, other than the abortion bill, that's always been an issue here in Kentucky. But uh,
You're talking
you
about the
know,
constitutional amendment, you mean?
yeah,
Yeah, the
and
constitutional
these
amendment.
and those, like I said, the outside money on both those, on the school choice and that, uh,
Hmm.
hurt us more than anything. Because,
Uh,
like you said,
Well,
8 to 1,
I,
10 to 1, whatever it was
with
high.
that being with that being brought up, Tony, I want to mention it right now. Here's one of Kentucky's biggest problems. When we're sending stuff to the electorate, whether it's a statewide race or
Mhm.
amendments to the Constitution, you name it, the U.S. Senate race is going to happen next year. The biggest problem that we have to contend with is that Louisville and Lexington have way too much power over this state.
Yeah, but
That's
you got to look at the population centers, and that's going to be always going to be an issue. It's an issue in every country, county,
hmm
and in every state. Uh, but I think uh, rural Kentucky is
hmm
making a significant change in that to some extent.
yes.
When you look at the number of voters that have voted in Meade County, Mercer County, Shelby, they've always increased, where the cities have kind of stayed the same. One of these
Uh-huh.
days, we're going to sneak up on them, and that might make a
yeah.
difference. But it's going to come down to us getting out here and beating the bushes for the people we want involved. I mean, you vote on two things: principle and character, and that's what I look at when I pick out a candidate. And we have to be able to sell that to other people. And even though
Yeah, I
we're
think
not,
one
well,
of
I'm
the
sorry.
things that's really interesting when I'm talking to the senators, the federal senators, when I'm talking to Senator McConnell and talking to Senator Paul, one of the things that they have told me that has been very interesting is that um, even like Senator McConnell, where he was from Jefferson County, in his Senate-wide race, he's only gotten 36 to 37% of the vote coming out of Jefferson County.
Mhm.
hmm
So if he can only get 36 or 37% of the vote, less than 40% of the vote in Jefferson County, then you're absolutely right. It's going to become very, very, very important for us rural counties to actually get out and vote,
Mhm.
and to make sure that, just to use the term of President Trump, too big to rig. I mean, it's
hmm
just too
Yeah.
big for us to fail, too big for we the people who represent most of the state. We have to get out and we have to vote. And that's just pretty much one of the problems that I've seen is that a lot of the conservatives, a lot of the people that really should care aren't coming out and voting.
Yeah,
And
they
that's the
kind
big
of,
problem.
and I've said this before. Back 3 years ago, we had a conservative conference, leadership conference. We had almost 600 people there. Out of that 600 people, I bet there's not 100 people being still active. They've stuck their head back in the sand and said, "Well, we got Trump in, we don't need to do anything." Well,
Yeah.
that's bad news for us.
Tony, I know
Yes,
you know him well. I had a
yeah,
conversation with Jacob Clark just a few weeks back, and that was part of the conversation. Whenever there's a Republican president in, everybody gets complacent, and that's a problem.
well, as far as I'm
And
concerned, it's actually time for us to double down. It's actually time for us to get even more determined that we're going to demonstrate character, that we're going to demonstrate the concern, and to continue to demonstrate that we're people of integrity.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you'll ever win others over. You can't, the Democrats have proven the fact that you can't bully your way or try to bully your way and win, and that's what they've tried to do, and it finally caught up with them. I mean, they were doing it for a while, but by hook or crook, depending on how you look at it. But I believe we do have a opportunity to improve Kentucky's politics. I think we have more people embracing the policies of Trump. As far as Trump goes, he's not my best friend by no means. But I will tell you this: I think he's done a great job. I think he's done a good job as president the last time he's in, and I think he'll do better this time. And he's starting to prove it. Yeah, there's some things I question about. I mean, is it really constitutional or is it not? And but I'm gonna follow his lead for now because I want to see where it's going. And as a Republican, we've got to get the chance to see what happens. It does make the changes. I see, great things
I will
happening.
say a couple things, Tony. I have noticed thus far with Trump with this second term. I asked the question on whether or not what he's doing is constitutional or not in his first term. I'm not getting that a whole lot with his second one, so that's a good positive step.
Yeah.
The other thing to go along with that I want to go ahead and mention, I want every listener out there to know the reason why we're having this conversation here tonight is not just for Kentucky's need to have a constitutional convention. It's also for you to ask questions. Does your state need to have one? And if they do need to have one, reach out and find out what the procedure is in order to have that done. I want listeners to understand that tonight. Here in Kentucky, I know that Nancy, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that Kentucky would be able to call for a constitutional convention as per what it actually says is the assembly would actually vote in accordance to have the convention, then that would go to the people, and then after that goes and is voted on by the will of the people, then what would happen is we would actually have elections to decide who would be taking part in the convention, and then afterwards they would schedule a date to actually have the constitutional convention, and then we would get down to business, so to speak.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So what would happen is 2/3 of the General Assembly would have to vote in order to call a convention of state. So once 2/3 of the General Assembly agreed to call it, then it has to be put on the ballot for the qualified voters. 1/4 of the qualified voters have to agree that a convention of state is required. Once 1/4 of the qualified voters vote that yes, we need that, then according to the Constitution of Kentucky, 100 delegates would be selected. 100 delegates would be selected, one from each. Well, right now there's 100 delegates in the House. Yeah. So it would match the House, the districts. So there's 100 delegates, or excuse me, there's 100 representatives in the same districts where the representatives reside. There would be a delegate that would come out of each one of those districts. Now, it doesn't say that it has to be the representative.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that it has to be the senator. It just says that 100 delegates come out of one of the districts.
In other words, you would have to actually run to be a delegate.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's no automatic assumption that I would
Right.
represent my district. That's exactly right. Now, what would have to happen is that each one of those delegates would have to meet the same qualifications as the representative. In other words, we would have to be 24 years old. We would have to be a citizen of Kentucky. We'd have to have lived in our district or in the state for 2 years. We'd have to have lived in our district for a year. And of course, we couldn't have participated in a duel
Yeah.
in order to be the delegates,
A
right?
lot of that
And so,
going on.
yeah.
It needs to be brought up real quick. If we did decide to do a constitutional convention, we could change the state oath during that time to not include the portion about the duel.
That's
Yeah.
right, right. But I think also, just because there's only 100 delegates doesn't mean that more people couldn't be involved. Let's just
Right.
say hypothetically that I'm going to be a delegate for District 27. Let's just say hypothetically, that doesn't mean that I couldn't have town halls. That doesn't mean that I couldn't, what do we need to do with our Constitution?
Yeah.
And in talking to some of the lawyers that actually, that I've talked to and in depth about this, their recommendation is why don't we just take it back to the U.S. Constitution? Take it all the way back to the U.S. Constitution. And then what parts of the U.S. Constitution would we want to change? And I'm like, that is a novel idea. That's a great idea, right?
Yeah.
And so there's
There
a
are.
lot of different ways that we could skin this cat. And I think
Yeah.
that we just don't have to focus on what we think might be the bad parts about it. Make it to be exactly what we want it to be. The good parts of the process, in other words.
Yeah. That's when you go to the U.S. Constitution, you're really reaching out. I mean, to be honest, uh, because of the way we couldn't just change it for our state. The United States
No,
Constitution
no,
changed it.
I'm saying take the Kentucky Constitution back to the very part,
Oh,
the U.S. Constitution. Strip
sure.
everything out of it, take it back to just the U.S. Constitution, and have that be the starting point
You know, I
for
love you for some
for
reason.
Kentucky to look at.
I've always
Right?
said that.
Yeah. Right.
I
Right.
mean,
Right.
look how
Right.
thick this is.
Exactly. Well, I love this. I love to use this because if you look at this little book, this is the U.S. Constitution.
Yeah.
This is the Kentucky Constitution. I
Yep.
mean, it's like 4 times bigger, 5 times bigger, and it's actually holding Kentucky. This is actually legislation. Isn't a framework. And we
Mm.
need to make our Constitution be a framework like the U.S. Constitution is.
Every bad decision made by our legislators is in this book.
Yep.
Every
And it came back from 1891.
Yeah.
We're living under bad decisions that were implemented as the Constitution into our bad legislation that was put into our Constitution,
Exactly.
and a lot of those we talked about earlier.
Right. And I think that's a very good idea. That I mean, there are just so many things in here that just don't even affect Kentuckians, but they do affect their businesses and they do affect their economics and education. And some of these, if you read it, especially in the education part, we're failing because of this book.
Hmm.
What's
Yeah.
in here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the history of the Kentucky, our very first Constitution, I think it took 8 years to create our very
Yeah.
first Constitution. So just because we're saying we're going to call the Convention of State and we want to do it, we get the approval to do it, that doesn't mean that it has to be done overnight. It can be done strategically and pragmatically and actually end up being a framework that the majority of us could live with.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it needs to be a framework for the future and not the handful of people that lived back then. I mean, they were smart people. Don't get me wrong. But when
Absolutely. I
they
love
met
our
in
founding
Danville,
fathers.
they had no clue that what today's going to be like.
Mhm.
I think our founding fathers in the U.S. Constitution had a better idea than what these guys did.
Well, the
Uh,
reason why they did was because it's a framework. It's not legislation. It's
yeah,
actually
this is
there's things that are embedded, but there's latitude in order to interpret. I agree with you. It's not a living document. It is not a living document, but there's still latitude for today's world to stick with the rights to bear arms,
yeah,
the rights to practice your
Yes.
religion as you wanted, all those things. I think we firmly agree with, and we wouldn't change. We wouldn't want those to be changed at all,
Well, I
right?
have a
And
problem with
those
our right to bear arms in here because it says basically at the legislators, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? But you have a right to do it as long as legislators say it.
you're
That's what
saying that's in the
this
Kentucky
says.
Constitution.
Do what?
You're saying
Oh
that's
yeah,
in the Kentucky
The
Constitution.
Kentucky one says
That's
that.
right.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so, fortunately, the U.S. Constitution actually overrides
right.
yes.
So
the
that's why we
legislators
need to
in that
change that
regard.
because
That's
it's
right.
just one of the many things that need to be changed. And I agree. I think we should consider uh, putting together a committee to take a better look at this. I
Hmm.
know that what was the name, lady up north, White Whitting. I can't remember her name. Mary Whitting or Martha Whitting. I don't remember her name. Uh,
Marianne Proctor.
no, not Mary Ann. She's not. She hasn't run for office.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Uh, she was with Constitution of State.
Oh,
Push
hmm.
Whitting, I think is her last name.
Hmm.
She's up north. I can't remember her name, but she was pushing pretty hard with things, and there's other people involved. But I think if we were serious, we would start today forming a committee that would want to take a look at this and say what can we do to make changes, how are we going to approach it, and a little bit different than what maybe the national group's trying to do. But
Well, whenever you
seriously,
couldn't hear us, when you couldn't hear us, Tony, one of the things that I mentioned was that right now we already have a committee in the House, and it's
mhm,
called Elections, Constitutional Amendments, and Intergovernment Affairs.
yeah,
So we already have a group of legislators that are already looking at our Constitution. So wouldn't that be a great place for us to start with a resolution calling for a convention of state? And then actually
I,
drafting the
yeah, I
legislation
think
or,
you'd have to.
for it to be on the ballot. Right. Absolutely. That's a perfect place to start. And we already have that in the House. We
Okay.
don't have a committee in the Senate, but that
Right.
doesn't mean that we could not and would not have the opportunity, obviously, from the House to
Well,
invite
yeah,
our senators to be involved in that.
the house would need to give basically get the things rolling, and uh,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely. It's
then
our responsibility to
I,
do that.
and I
That's correct.
think seriously the committee should hold town halls. Because that way they have an idea. I mean, we were holding town halls a lot, getting ideas about different groups and or different counties and different organizations in Louisville and stuff, and we learn a lot and we
Yeah.
learn how to help out those communities. But if I'm on a committee, I want to sit down and I want to hear what you have to say about the Constitution, what changes we can make, how we can better the state by doing that, and how many people would actually get involved in doing it. Because that's where it's going to be, the numbers.
Yeah, and I think it's more than just that committee. I think it's actually every legislator needs to go back to their district and have this conversation. And that's one of the reasons why I think that you all approached me about this because in the Hardin County Lincoln Day dinner, that was the second time that I've actually had and gave my presentation regarding why we need to call a convention of state for the Constitution of Kentucky to be rewritten. And I think that it would be great for all of us to find out, as legislators, all of us to find out what we the people think about that.
Yeah, and I think it's time. I think it's time we do get that question out there and try to move forward with it.
Yeah.
But we can sit down with the committee and just say whatever we can do to help, we will. And if we're not willing to do that, then it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah,
But I
and
think,
I know that people think that the only reason why I'm doing this is because we have a Republican supermajority. Okay, maybe that's part of it, but at the same time, as you all kind of alluded to, as you know, every one of the legislators that are in office right now, regardless of whether they're Republican, whether Democrat, urban, rural, liberal, conservative, we all represent our districts, and
yeah,
this would be a perfect time for us to actually have that conversation and to start
It's hot in
grinding
here.
and trying to decide, what our
No.
constitution for the current and for the future needs to look like.
yeah,
Hmm.
I agree wholeheartedly.
But I think we could get that 2/3 vote. That's the part that's important from the General Assembly, is to get that 2/3 vote to even start.
I mean, as long as you can even convince enough Republicans, we'll have that 2/3 majority. Because hey, we just mentioned it, supermajority right now. There's 80 Republicans in the House, 31 out of 38 in the Senate right now. I mean, we've
That's
got
right.
the numbers to do it if we
Yeah.
just do it on the Republican side.
That's right.
So I mean, it needs
That's
to be
right.
done.
Yeah, and so in some of the conversations with my fellow legislators, one of the reasons why we're not doing it, one of the reasons is because, as you all mentioned, the Constitution that would modify the amendment that was on the ballot that would modify school choice in the Constitution, and Constitutional Amendment number 2 for the pro-life, to add pro-life language in the Constitution. Since those didn't pass, people are like, oh, well, Nancy, they're just going to see that we are just sour grapes, and this is the only way that we can get our way. I'm like, well, regardless of what happens, there's always going to be those naysayers.
Yeah.
So do we think our Constitution needs to be changed or not? And I think it's really time for us to seriously think about that and not worry about those naysayers. What do we want for Kentucky currently and in the future?
Before I hand it back over to John, I just want to mention that, my main reasons for wanting this, it's not just because those amendments failed. It's beyond the point where we've actually taken a hard enough look. Our framework itself has got flaws.
Yeah,
and that's the problem. When your framework has flaws, you might as well not even build.
Yeah.
So, John, I'm going to turn it back over to you for a second. You got any questions you want to ask?
No, I've been kind of in and out of this beginning because of the technical issues, but I'll tell you what. Once this audio worked itself out, I don't know what it did, but it was having problems at the beginning. But once it worked itself out, you guys sound great. Especially Tony there. I couldn't hardly understand what he was saying. All of a sudden,
I'm not sure what was going on. It may have been on my end, I guess, but you got fixed anyway.
Honestly, I think it was a platform issue, but yeah, man, you had a lot of good stuff to say. It was a really interesting conversation. Pretty in depth, I thought. From what I got, what I get out of it, like I say, I had a lot of distractions going on, trying to figure out what was going on. But
John, this is the reason why I knew we needed to bring Nancy on and Tony on for this discussion, because I knew it was going to get some attention.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
And I'm sure that there's going to be some, like we said, some naysayers, and then obviously the people that are just interested in learning more about this topic. And I think that that's great. The more we can talk about it, the more people can learn about it. And the funny thing is that when I started this conversation, I think that I've actually handed out over 1,000 of our constitutions. So just by us having this conversation encourages people to go back and look at our Constitution, which we all need to do. We even talked about our children from a civics perspective at learning and knowing more about it. And I think that as adults, we need to continue to learn and know more about our Constitution as well.
Well, I would like to push my website just for a minute. Constitutionalkentucky.org. It's all spelled out. If you want constitutions, we've given out almost 50,000 since 2019, and we want to continue to give them out. And if you want one, or you got a group that wants one, send us an email, and we'll make sure you get them.
Yeah, and I think it's also important. I just went into my local school system, one of my local schools, and actually talked about the Constitution. And I had the children ask some amazing questions. We actually went through a scenario and of why they couldn't do something that they thought was really important, and it's because the Constitution prohibited us from doing that.
Yeah, and it's remarkable the number of people that do not know what the Constitution is. I mean, we stood in line at the unemployment fiasco a couple years ago, and we passed this Constitutions out to everybody along with water, and they wouldn't know what this book was. And I said, this is your life right here in this book, if you follow it. Between that and the Bible, you can't go wrong. And it was shocking that people didn't know what it was.
And it needs to be brought up now that you mentioned it about those folks standing in line at that unemployment office. Kentucky's debt right now, before Governor Bevin left, it had been cut down from $42 billion down to $35 billion.
Yeah.
We have now had Andy Beshear in there now for almost 6 years now, and now our debt is well over $55 billion now because of all that, and most of that was because of those unemployment claims.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. They I know a lot of people that were on unemployment and then got bills saying you got to pay it back. I fought for a couple of those and tried to get it finished, and I had to reach out to, uh, you know, uh, Jennifer Decker, and I appreciate her what she's done as far as trying to help those people out. Uh, but it's good to know we got our legislators that will stand up for us and try to make things right. Can't do it all the time. I understand that. But there are good legislators up there, and there's some that you can take or leave them. Uh, no criticism on any of them.
Yeah, I think it's what I would encourage people to do, Tony, and every person who listens to this, I would encourage every person to actually make sure that they know who their legislator is, first of
Sure.
all, and to make sure that they know not only their name but who they are, and
Yeah.
then and to develop that relationship with every. I mean, I know that that's going to be hard. That's going to say that 45,000 of my constituents need to develop a relationship with me. But I can tell you that even though I get over 500 emails a day, I can tell you that
Mhm.
that's I can see the same people repeatedly contacting me, and so probably 1% of my constituents
Yeah.
actually contact me. So I think it's really, really, really important to develop a relationship with your legislator. And the
Yeah, I
ones
do
that I
too.
know are very receptive to emails, conversations, town halls. I mean, we knock doors. I think that's very important to communicate and to reach out and make sure that you know who your legislator is,
And I
because
think
that's what the Constitution says.
yeah,
That's one of the
that,
reasons why we're on the ballot every 2 years is to stay in touch with our constituents.
right. And I think you said it best though that the people that the legislators that have town hall meetings, I don't care if it's once a quarter or whatever. Uh, it's our responsibility to show up.
Hmm.
And you're not going to get everybody there. We understand that, but if I'm having a town hall here in Shelby County, uh, if I don't have 30 people there, I'm probably failed.
Mm-hmm.
My opinion. There's got to be, you know, there's got to be more than 30 people interested in what I have to say. The
Yeah.
same way in any county. I've been to town hall meetings where I've had a legislator that had 4 people there.
Hmm.
And this person's a good legislator, so
Hmm.
you'd think there'd be more people show up.
Yeah.
But it seems like sometimes if you're doing very well, there's always the opposite side going to be there to try to knock you down. But
Mm-hmm.
Well,
they need
but
to have
Tony, at the same time, and I agree with you. I mean, I've had town halls or I've had meetings with and scheduled meetings with my constituents. I might send out 250 invitations,
yeah
personal invitations, and then I put it on Facebook. I put it on everything that I possibly can. I might end up having 25 or 30 people at the most. It's the same people over and
yeah
over. But even it's the people that actually want to challenge me, some of my best ideas I've gotten from my worst critics. So, all I say is just throw it on the table. Let's throw it on the table
that's
and let's
because
talk
you'll
about it.
listen. You will
Yeah,
listen,
yeah,
and
absolutely,
some people won't.
absolutely.
But
And sometimes I'll say, here's why we're at where we're at, but that doesn't mean that we can't move forward. I think all of us are process improvement people, and we all, regardless of again whether we're Republicans, Democrats, liberal, conservative, rural, urban, we all have all the legislators and most of the people that attend those meetings, even if they're my worst critics, actually have Kentucky's best interest in mind.
I think you're right.
And we're all
Uh,
just approaching it a little bit differently. And that's what we have to do is change hearts and be willing to work together and to listen to each other, regardless of how it's thrown on the table. So
Mm-hmm.
let's just throw it on the
well, I
table and
believe
let's talk
that
about it.
if you voted on something that I didn't agree with, just tell me why. I'm okay with that, And I
That's right.
should be asking you that question, but instead of
Mm-hmm.
going behind your back and going, well, she voted on this or, whatever. That's what
Hmm.
people do.
That's
That's
right.
just common nature. But
That's
Right.
right.
my opinion is, uh, you know, ask the question. You may not like the answer, but at least you've got an answer from somebody, and you can't say, well, she did this or he
Hmm.
did this. It's all about let's get the truth out there and explain that bill better than the person I read on Facebook tried to do it.
Hmm.
Uh, makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about communication. We have to keep doing it. So,
Absolutely. And I agree with that. And communication is definitely welcomed.
yeah. Well, we appreciate you. We really
Well,
Yeah.
do.
thank you. I appreciate
All
you all.
right.
And it's just important for us
And
to,
AJ, thank you. So,
absolutely.
John, don't know you, but thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be on and discuss this topic because it's near and dear to my heart. I said it's actually become my new passion. You
There
know,
you go.
I'm a very passionate person, and you all know where my heart is as far as my passion is concerned. And so this is absolutely one of those things that, for the future of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, it needs to be discussed.
Well, let's thin this thing out.
Yes.
That's right, and just
All
and
right.
keep having the conversations.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to have somebody on next time that disagrees with us.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Why we shouldn't have a call the convention. Yeah.
I mean, I'd be open to those conversations, but at the same time, I'm just going to tell them outright. Do you really want to live the next century the way we had the last century? So, yeah.
Yes,
I
sir.
could invite a legislator to be on that side, but that's that.
Yeah.
John, you got anything else?
No, we're a little over time, so if you guys are all finished and ready to close out, I guess we could probably do that. Anybody got any closing statements or anything you want to say?
I just say thank you for letting me be on here. I appreciate it, and I'm in good company. So let's move forward.
Of course.
Well, I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to be on and to talk about this because, like I said, it's my new passion. And I think it's the more we talk about it, then the more that people actually educate themselves regarding our Constitution, which is, as we've talked about before, is actually sorely needed for people to be aware. And then the more they know about our Constitution, then they know that there's opportunity for improvement.
Absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's our show for tonight. We hope you got something out of it. I hope you've listened very closely to what's being said to you because your Constitution is what guides your government. And if you don't have a qualified Constitution, you need to amend it. I think that's what we're talking about tonight. It's an old saying from the Greeks, you may not take an interest in politics, but politics will take an interest in you. So it's always better to pay attention to your politicians, connect with your politicians, make them more of a source of entertainment than watching television and drinking beers late in the evening. So with that being said, we wish you a good night. We wish you well, and stay tuned for more later on coming up. And
All right,
you all
great.
have